This is a much loved jumper, but the friend is finding that the bell sleeves are annoying her. They're very long, come almost to the tips of her fingers. And so I'm going to chop it off here and do some alterations using this wool. It's also got holes in other places. So let's take a look. Firstly, I've measured length of the sleeve plus a couple of centimetres. And just to be on the safe side, I'm going to chop straight across and take off this nice decorative arrangement there. Now we don't have to worry when we're chopping really fine knitwear like this because there's no pressure on any of this, so it's not going to unravel, and it gives us a nice raw edge, so I'll think up something creative to do with that. So I've turned the sleeve inside out and I've pinned where I want to back stitch because we're going to create another seam of the knitwear going down here so that we don't have these bell-shaped sleeves anymore. And we're using this wool which roughly matches and is quite fine mending wool. I'm not using a needle which is for wool specifically. I think it's for embroidery because I don't want huge great holes in quite a fine knit. So here I'm going to start securing my thread for back stitch in the seam, and we're going to do a couple of stitches overlapping where it currently exists, the seam that is, and then just do a nice even back stitch. I must make this thread a bit shorter, otherwise I'm going to be a long time pulling the threads through on video. I'm going to take this needle out because it'll get the pin out, it'll get in the way, and try and do a fairly even back stitch. Now I don't want to pull it tight because I don't want this to gather, these to lay nice and flat. So I'll just do a couple more and then I'll finish off and show you the end results. Yeah, so I go behind and back up front, and that's about the size of my stitch. So I'm going to finish all the way down the line, try and make sure I keep on track, and then I'll show you what I do next. So we're coming to the end of the row now. I'm going to go all the way to the end. Oh, it's not perfect, it's not like a sewing machine straight row, but I don't worry because this is wool and Angora, and this is a wool thread. It's all knitted, and knitting is very forgiving. It's more or less straight, and it will work. So we are. I'm going to trim that off now. The next thing that may worry you, but is perfectly all right because it's knitting, and there's no point of pressure on here, is I'm now going to slice this bit off. So I'm going to neaten up my seam. There we are. Now I've got two of the same sleeves, so I want to make sure I do absolutely the same. Now I will do the same on the other sleeve. The front of this jumper has some gathers here, and I thought about undoing it and putting in some sort of button finish on the inside and that sort of thing. And we could do that, but this friend likes to wear quite plain clothing. She's a stylish dresser, but it's quite simple. And so I've decided I'm just going to mend that. That's not difficult. So using the thread that I already have, I should just turn it inside out and do a bit of straight mending. So we might just speed this up, but I'll show you the outcome. So first of all, I'm going to link the gaps together because that's most important. That gets the shape back. There. Because it's the shape around the neckline that makes it pretty. There we are. Now I'm going to check on the front again. Yeah, that's looking much better. So now all I'm going to do, I think, is bind with this thread. I'll make it single again and just bind it together. So I'm not going to show you that. You know how to do that sort of thing. 5 minutes, and I think that's good enough. That's perfect. So I pulled both of these down at the back into position, and then I just bound it together. It doesn't look fantastic at the back, but it looks good at the front, and that is good enough. So having given it some thought, now I'm going to have to go back to the sleeves. When you're doing upcycling, you have to be prepared to be flexible. I wanted to do blanket stitch in the end, I decided, and I had to experiment whether I worked from the front or the reverse, and I've decided to work from the reverse of the cloth. So I'm going to show you how that works now. So I'm going to secure the stitch. I'm working double thread for this because I think it'll look pretty, and the colour more or less matches, which is handy. That's an accident, but it's nice. Now I'm working from the back, so I'm going to loop my thread so that I can get it started. Trim those little things off. You don't want to have the thread too long when you're doing blanket stitch. It does tend to knot, but then that means you have to have more joins, but we'll work on that one. So come up to the edge of the cloth with the yarn behind, and then do the same. And you want to keep roughly the same width of stitch and the same distance from the edge, because that gives it consistency. And especially as this is a visual finish, that's pretty important. I'm going to do a couple more stitches and then show you why I'm working from the reverse. I think you'll find that it's more even and prettier on the front. So let's see if I'm right. I'll stop after this stitch. There we are. Let's turn it over and see. There. That's quite even, I think, and that's quite nice. I'll go on until I have to do a join, show you the join, and then I shall do the whole thing and show you the finish. This is looking okay, I think. It's looking quite pretty. So the thread started to twist, so keep untwisting it as you go. I've done a stitch, and I think this is getting quite short. So rather than do the normal stitch at the top, I'm just going to bring it down to the back and do a couple of stitches on the existing thread, and I am not going to make it too tight. Yeah? And snip that. I've rethreaded with double threads. So now I'm going to take my threads through to the bottom and bind them around the previous knot. Now it looks a bit heavy, but don't worry, because I don't think you'll see it from the front. There, it's not really visible. And take the yarn through the previous loop that's now secure, and then start all over again. Looks lumpy at the back, but it won't look lumpy at the front, and the front is what we care about. I've nearly finished going around the sleeve, and so I've just got a couple more stitches to do and it's done. So I'm going to complete the circle, take it right across the seam line, there we are, and joined it up. Now I'm going to come back down onto the inside and re-secure the thread onto the seam line. That is the iron clicking, because in a minute I just put the iron on because I'm going to press it. So I've going to click there and turn it inside out, because the great thing about wool is that it really responds to steam. So let's have a look and see how neat this looks. Yeah, I don't think that's bad. I think that's quite attractive. It's now a much narrower sleeve, so let's have a look. It won't get caught. It's not dangling, it's not down to here, and that's the edge. But if we want to make it even neater, we can give it a quick press. So steaming is really important. It gets the fibres to relax, and then you just sort of press it into shape and leave it to cool. I think that's a great remake of a jumper. It's going to wear and wear. And we've done a couple of places. So we've fixed this centre place, which was top vision, and we've altered the sleeves. And it doesn't really look like it's been changed much. Great.